Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the August 18th meeting of the Select Board. We have one member absent tonight, and we will discuss later the fact that we have one open seat. So please, if you are able to, rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and thank you, Nick, for sharing Old Glory with us. I'm going to assume that, or maybe that was Sean that was responsible for that, but thank you. All right, so we are going to move first into our public comment. Public comment speakers are allotted 3 minutes apiece, and we will confine the overall marks to 24 minutes. Nick Connors is going to be helping me with promotion to the platform here. And Nick, if you could also keep track of the overall 21 minutes. I will keep track of the 30 seconds. And as soon as I get my timer app open here, I will ask our first speaker to start. It looks like we have Ms. Agostino. So Ms. Agostino, if you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and you will have 3 minutes. Diane, if you can hear me, we need you to unmute so we can start your time.
It took her a moment before when she had a question, so I assume she's trying to unmute right now.
Okay. Well, I don't see anybody else with their hand up, so we'll give her some more time. Diane, can you ask her to unmute, Nick?
I just did so.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I've hit it a couple
Hi,
times. There she
sorry, I
is.
didn't see that.
That's okay. Ms.
I
Agostino,
can't hear you. Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
so you'll have 3 minutes if you please introduce yourself.
Diane DeTullio, Agostino, Precinct 9 up on Ridgewood Road. And I'm a former selectman, which I want to stress because I've sat at that table and dealt with these exact same issues that I'm going to be discussing. First is saving lives from death and disability. MassDOT came in 3 to 4 weeks ago, and they stated, I don't know if you recall, that they wanted to get safety features in place by Labor Day. Well, school starts before Labor Day, and you're going to discuss it tonight, but you're also missing one of the two people voted, the chair and the state rep, town meeting member, board member, voted to review the pilot presentation that was quickly put together because they do have ways they can make Randolph Ave safer. We just learned last Friday that my landlocked neighborhood students are supposed to be getting on a bus at the Hilltop Street extension. It's not even a street. And that's exactly where the 3 people died on Randolph Ave. So we've already notified the school department that that's not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. If the select board can do anything to assist with that serious concern for the first day of school next week, that would be wonderful. The second comment has to do with the law firms, the reviews of the law firms. When I was a selectman, which was over 30 years ago, that was one of the very important issues that I presented, that we needed to look at it. And I want to make sure that this board is aware of the fact that at a town meeting, I requested whether or not Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, Lehane, or the then town council represented any of the owners of Quarry Hills or Quarry Hills during our select board, because I was on the select board then, our discussions to contract with Quarry Hills. The answer was yes. It's saved on the tape. They were reported to the regulatory, and they were headline news that they were representing, which, most of you have dealt with the situation that if you represent one party in anything, you can't go represent them against a different party. And lastly, I implore you tonight to have the election on October 21st, which by the laws is the earliest date, we feel, we, meaning a lot of the residents, feel very strongly it needs to be done before the
You've got
special
20 seconds, Diane.
before the special town meeting. And considering the votes lately have been 3-2, we feel there needs to be an opportunity for an election October 21st, not November. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Augustino. I don't see anybody else. Nick, do you see anyone else in the queue?
There is no one else.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and close that part of the meeting. I know that uh, Nick Milano is going to be joining us a little late. He's actually on vacation and is very kindly offering some of his time this evening. So I think we can go ahead with some of these discussions. And then if we feel like there's topics where we want Nick to weigh in on, we can just wait. But I don't want to, I might want to suggest that we do election of vice chair and or secretary before we do the discussion, just because I think we could do that first, and then Nick would be around. Maybe Nick will be able to join us by the time we discuss the open seat. Does that sound okay for you guys? Okay. Well, considering that Mr. Cohen has resigned from the board, we do have a couple of openings. So we obviously have our vice chair position open, and we have a couple of committee assignments open. So I'll accept nominations first for vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Winston Daly for vice chair.
Okay, Mr. Daly, I would second that recommendation or that nomination. Do you accept?
Yeah. Yes, I would accept.
Okay, great. Well, let's do a quick vote on that unless there's any further need for discussion. I don't know, Ms. Haggard, if you want to add anything to your nomination.
I think my colleague, Mr. Daly, would do a great job as vice chair, and that's why I am nominating him.
Well, I agree with that sentiment, and I second it. Unfortunately, Mr. Daly, it means if you are appointed this position, you'll have to get on the phone with me one time a week at least to review agendas. But I'd welcome your acceptance of this. And so, with no further comment, I'll put it to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
I
Oh, I'm sorry. We have to roll call this.
You have to do a roll call, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. So we'll do a roll call vote because we're virtual. Ms. Hegarty,
yes.
Mr. Daly.
Abstain.
Myself, yes. So, Mr. Daly, congratulations on your appointment to the vice chair of the select board.
Thank you.
Now, on the agenda was the election of the secretary. Ms. Hegarty, you're already the secretary and doing a great job. Everyone can see you taking notes. So I don't think we need to move that position around. So I guess not knowing when Mr. Milano will be able to join us, I'm okay if the board is okay if we want to discuss now Mr. Cohen's resignation, or if we want to move another agenda item up first.
I'm okay with discussing it now.
Yeah, I think we should, because we're going to need to discuss the potential special election. So
Yeah, we have a lot on our plate tonight.
yeah.
So I can report as the chair. So I received notice from Mr. Milano while I was on vacation overseas, which I knew it was an emergency because Nick knew where I was and was calling anyways. So he let me know that Mr. Cohen had come into the office to submit his resignation. He had given a letter of resignation, which I think has subsequently been posted to the town website. I think we can say that there had been some turbulent activities behind the scenes a bit with Mr. Cohen. And so his resignation, while certainly I was surprised by it, I was also not 100% surprised by it. And I'd hoped that we might be able to find a way to keep Mr. Cohen engaged in the board, but he has declined to talk with me any further. So here we are. So I would open the floor for comments. Obviously this will also get us into the special election, but that's a separate agenda item. So I think for this one, let's just make sure that we're keeping our comments just about Mr. Cohen. And I will say, finally, that I myself, worked very hard to try to find ground with John that we could, if not agree on, at least discuss. And I felt like our last meeting, we had demonstrated that, and I even seconded a motion he made for the purpose of discussion, even though he knew that I wasn't going to vote for it. I still wanted to make sure that he had his chance to say what he wanted to say about it. And so I'm very sorry that we weren't able to find a way to keep him on the board. I will also say that there were some actions of Mr. Cohen behind the scenes that with town staff that frankly concerned me, and I was hoping that we'd be able to address those as well. We're not going to be able to do that now, at least on the select board. So that's one of the reasons why I wasn't totally surprised. And I think that's all I'd like to say about that. So I'll open the floor for comments from other members.
I don't have much to add to what you shared, Chair Zoll. I'll just say this role, certainly in the early stages of it for me, is not easy. There's a lot that comes with it, a lot of scrutiny from the outside, as well as we don't all agree, and those discussions are tough. But I do feel that when you are voted into the chair, that is what folks expect us to do, to find a way to move forward. I'll say that John, in the time that I was able to work with him, was certainly a tireless advocate for the issues that were most important to him. And, while we may have disagreed on some things, agreed on others, I hope that he felt that he had the space to share. I think we try to make things as open and transparent as possible. I wish that he did get a chance to, sort of say his farewell. I think and that's certainly, I think we would have that space open to him if he would want to do that in the future. I know he sent us the letter, which we posted online. And I think at the end of this, we're all neighbors, Miltonites, we're still going to be residents. And hopefully we're still, in community with each other. So unfortunate, but I guess we have to find a way to move forward.
Just to pivot off of what both of you have mentioned, I definitely am disappointed that Mr. Cohen decided not to serve out the remainder of his term. I believe that there was good chemistry in general among this board. I know Mr. Wells is not present tonight, but I had very good positive interactions with both Mr. Cohen and Mr. Wells on a frequent basis. I know the incident that Mr. Zoll is speaking of, and that was disappointing. But I think we could have done more to work together to address that going forward. And I think that we need to take that experience and perhaps evaluate codes of conduct with town staff, or codes of conduct as select board members moving forward. I don't know that we necessarily have one, or if that's well publicized in our documents. But I would like to add that, similar to what Mr. Daly was mentioning about this being a demanding job and a lot to take on, I think that's part of why we try to work together and be collegial with one another beyond, there's nothing that we can do about the fact that we may not all agree with each other. That's hard enough, but I think that this team does a good job at being friendly and nice to one another. And Mr. Cohen was always friendly and nice to me, and I think we all treat each other very well. but I do think that we need to be careful in the future about making sure that, you know, when like people understand what's involved in this role, and that there's an expectation that people serve out the remainder of their term, because it is a big lift. People who voted for you are depending on you to represent them. And I know this is not germane to this part of the conversation, but there is a heavy cost to having to undergo a special election. So, but I know that the four of us can work together with the town staff to figure out how to proceed. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you both. And I think, you know, it's true. I think what everyone said here, and I do appreciate Mr. Daly's suggestion of offering Mr. Cohen the opportunity to come back and say his farewells, whether he'd like to do that privately or publicly. We'd be I'd be happy to get them myself. Also, I think he has a book that I lent him, so I'm sure I'll be seeing him some way or the other. But anyways, I think that will conclude the discussion there. I'd like to suggest, I know Mr. Milano isn't here, but I know we do have our fantastic town clerk, Sue Galvin, is with us. And so perhaps what we might start with, and Nick Connors, you let me know if you think this is a good idea, but it might be helpful for, you know, for the sake of discussion, what we're discussing here is the potential special election for the open seat for Mr. Cohen. Ms. Galvin, I know from my conversations with Mr. Milano, has had an opportunity to put together some sample timelines and numbers for what that might look like. And so perhaps we could start. There you are, Sue. We could start with her providing that sort of baseline information for everyone. And then if folks had questions for Sue on that, we could pose them to her at that point, and then Sue, we could let you just kind of hang around then while we finish the discussion. And if Mr. Milano has hopped on at that point, we can have him join. I'll text him and let him know that's where we are in the process. Does that sound good to you, Nick?
Yeah, I think Nick Milano's expectation was we would be deferring to Sue with her proposed schedule and the impacts and everything else for this, and he will be joining as soon as he can. I also just texted.
Okay.
But I think this is one where I think Sue's expertise is what we would rely on as well. So hopefully it'll be helpful to you all.
I know it will be helpful. Sue, why don't we turn this over to you then, if you'd like to kick us off.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. So as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, I too received a letter of resignation from Mr. Cohen on August 25th at about approximately 3:22. So that starts the ball rolling. According to Mass General Law, a resignation doesn't take effect until it is received by the town clerk. As well as he did also send you a formal resignation as well. So according to Mass General Law, it states, and this is Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 10, and it states that the remaining select board have the authority to call a special election to fill the vacancy. However, the select board is not obligated to do so, and in some situations, the seat can remain vacant until the next annual election. However, with the caveat that if we received a written request by 200 registered voters, or 20% of the number of registered voters, whichever is less, then a special election must be called. And that also would be within 100 days prior to the annual town meeting. I mean, a town election, excuse me. So it would be my suggestion that you consider calling a special election. I do feel that given the nature of the select board position, that we would get 200 signatures from the residents that would be interested in a call of a election. Suggested dates, Boston, Quincy, they both have elections on November 4th. It is a Tuesday, which keeps in line with what we typically hold our elections on. The benefit for doing that would be because Boston and Quincy are having it, we can capitalize on the advertisement that they will generate. In the past, we have received phone calls from residents on a Boston or a major election day that Boston or Quincy is having, from residents saying, "Oh, I'm at my voting location. There's nobody here." So, I mean, because it generates so much publicity, it kind of makes sense for us to use that date. I know Miss DeTulio Agostino suggested the date of October 21st, which would be prior to the special town meeting. However, a vote would have to occur today in order for, because today would be the last date in which you folks could provide notice for it to occur on that date. And again, there may be confusion for voters by having it prior to that November 4th date. I don't know if you folks have any questions for me. Kind of jumping all around, so.
A
So
question
just
for Ms. Galvin.
so I think you said August 25th. Did you mean July 25th was the resignation date?
I did, I'm sorry,
That's
thank you.
okay. I just want to make sure that we have it clear. I figured that's what you meant.
Yep.
Could you give us just a special election with just one seat open? Do we have any history where the town has done that before for one seat?
So,
And what would be the potential costs for us?
okay, so the town did do it. It happened, so with a select board seat, you can't appoint somebody if there has to be an election. There's no method for an appointment. So back in 1985, 86, I'm sorry.
Oh, I remember it well.
Yes. So there was a resignation on the Board of Selectmen. It was Walter Timilty. It was a 3-member board at that time. And so they did host a special election for that. And that occurred in December of that year.
Do you know how much time he had left on his term?
Those were 1-year terms in those days. So all the select board members ran at the same time.
Yeah.
And they were 1-year terms. I think about 2 or 3 years later, they had a ballot question to make it a 3-year term.
And the cost that you would estimate for this election too? So
I'm basing it solely off of the special election that we had in February of 24. We roughly spent about 55,000. So I would guesstimate or request about 60,000. A lot of unknowns with vote by mail, and that's where the labor costs and the actual ballot costs come from. So obviously any monies that aren't used would be returned promptly.
Okay, Ms. Haggerty, you have a question?
Mr. Daly took my question, but no, so my question was on the cost. I also want to know from the staff, meaning Nick, and Susan, what do the town staff recommend? Like, what is the, like, what are the operational considerations either way?
So if it's okay with you folks,
Because it seems
I
like
could
we
go
don't
first.
have to do this and we have like a few months. But, I want to
You-
make sure we're getting all of the information out there so that we can make the best decision.
Right, right. So according to the law, you do not have to, it's an option. However, the caveat is that if you choose not to, 200 registered voters could sign a petition,
Yep.
submit it, and you would be back at this same juncture and you would have to have an election. Some of the implications of not filling a vacant seat for your particular board. So generally, it's beneficial to fill the vacancy for the reasons to ensure a smooth operation of town government and adequate representation for our residents. So the length of the vacancy, if we were to wait till the April election, it would be 9 months.
Okay.
From the time of the resignation until the election. The workload of your board, and, specific needs of our town that are currently, that you would be more familiar with than, per se, I would. So those would be the things that I would consider, and, and think about, when making a decision.
Thanks, Ms. Galvin. Mr. Milano, maybe do you want to respond also to Ms. Haggerty's question?
All right, thank you, and sorry to be late this evening. I would defer certainly to the board in terms of the policy choice of whether or not to fulfill a seat. I think the town clerk and I had a conversation mostly about the impact to her staff in terms of manpower is not the right word, certainly in that office. The staff's operational ability and capacity, I think, is a better phrasing there. Town meeting obviously is the 27th. And when we originally had talked about dates, we had looked at the 18th to actually give some more wiggle room there between the demands of the town meeting and the demands of an election. And, but her conversations that she's relayed in terms of her recommendation of November 4th, I think makes sense, and her staff is able to manage that. So that would be where I weighed in. I think the other consideration for the board to keep in mind, and I mentioned this to, I think one of the members, was on the other side, if the seat did remain vacant until April, it would be potentially 3 new members being elected in one election, which would be potentially significant in terms of onboarding. And so that was just the other thing that kind of came to mind as I was thinking about it, is in terms of, having, there would certainly be 2 seats up in April. This would add a 3rd, which would mean that transitionary period might be a little bit longer than it normally might be. So those are my 2 comments in terms of just the impact on her staff was what my first concern was, and remains. And then that was the other policy consideration I just wanted to raise.
Other questions from the members?
Just so we have it here in the recorded space, this special election would be for the duration of John's term, right? Meaning that it would go for, let's say if we did November, it would be about an 18 months left.
Correct.
And if we waited until the regular town election, then we would have 2 seats that would be up for a 3-year term and 1 seat that would be up for a 1-year term.
Correct.
How would we be able, is that easily differentiated on our ballots if we did that?
So you've probably seen it. It happens quite regularly with town meeting members that, somebody might vacate their seat during their term. And so you would see, it would be listed as, 2 separate, they would follow in sync. So it would say, select board 3-year term, select board 1-year term to fill a vacancy.
And candidates would need to declare for one or the other.
They would absolutely have to.
Any further questions from the board? So I'd like to, here's a suggestion. I know that Mr. Daly feels, sorry, Mr. Daly. I know Ms. Daly's here, Ms. Hegarty's here. I know that, I know Richard, Mr. Wells was hoping to chime in on this subject as well. And I would like to let him have the opportunity to discuss. I think I don't know, Ms. Galvin, if we would need you to come back to a second meeting because I think we could encourage him to watch this to get the numbers and the stats. But I think it might make sense for us to hold off as a board making a decision until Mr. Wells has had an opportunity to chime in, just because this is an important issue, I think, in about the entire board. I guess so with my suggestion comes a caveat. I think if we did postpone for a week, that would it wouldn't interfere with our ability to hold the election on November 4th, but it would not allow us to hold the election on the date suggested by Ms. Agostino. I'm kind of persuaded that by Ms. Galvin that if we did have an election, that it would make sense to have it on the same day that Boston and Quincy were voting, just for sake of higher turnout. But those are just my thoughts. Ms. Haggerty.
What is the deadline for us to make a decision to enable November 4th?
September 1st. So I would need something formally in writing into my office by September 1st. However, if you were to make a decision to give the candidates the most optimal amount of time to pull papers, get their signatures, I would have papers available the day after you take your vote, and then presumably get something in writing from you folks the next day. But and I certainly will plan on attending to your next meeting, so that.
Well, thank you, Ms. Galvin. Mr. Daly.
Yes, I don't know if this is against procedure, but I would certainly be open to having some discussion amongst us here about where we're leaning right now, instead of having kind of rehash it when Member Wells joins us. Because
I think that's fine. Yeah.
we have a lot going on in the next meeting. I can start that by saying, coming into this, and since John's resignation, my feeling has been to not have the special election. My reasoning behind that being I did not think the cost of $60,000 for, what would be a bridge of 5 or 6 months into our standard election was worth it. But the points on, onboarding 3 members, having a 3-person election, and then having only potentially 2 returning members of the board in April does sway me a bit, as well as Sue's point of from resignation date, it would be 9 months without having a member. So, I'm moving a little bit away from not wanting to have the special election, although I do think that the cost is a bit much to swallow for. But is it attractive to enough folks in the town to run for a 1-year term? Maybe 18 months does get some candidates out. You got to think about that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. And I agree with you. I think sharing our opinions of where we are now makes a lot of sense. So to that vein, I don't know, Ms. Haggard, if you want to share any thoughts.
Similar to Mr. Daly, I mean, the most compelling argument is the operational burden argument. I am really disappointed about the cost of $60,000 to $65,000 for an election that doesn't have to happen. Somebody could have fulfilled their term. And I do have concerns about individuals wanting to step up and run for a 1-year seat. I mean, it's a grueling process for somebody to run, for 8 weeks. Well, I mean, I guess it, I'm just trying to put myself in somebody else's shoes. I mean, it's a lot to do at the start of a school year, you know, seasons changing, things getting busy. I mean, this really left the town in a lurch, and I just need to go on the record in stating that. I haven't made a final decision yet, but I will say that it's not the most responsible action that I've seen. And it's leaving us with not a lot of good options.
Thank you, Ms. Haggerty. And so I guess I have actually another question for you, Ms. Galvin, if you don't mind. So my understanding is that substantially, if there were two seats that were up or three seats on the special election, as the same as one seat, the cost would essentially be the same. So it wouldn't cost any more money if we were voting on two different positions.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
It's more the election in general, whether you had 1,000 things that people were voting on or one.
that's kind of what I thought. I was like, I
Yeah.
guess if you somehow managed to make it a 5-page ballot or something like that,
Yeah.
it could bump up your printing costs, but we're not aspiring to do anything like that. So then, and a second question would be, um, if we make a decision on having a special election, I know it's, you know, it's a little out of scope to say, but there may be other people who are on other boards that might be thinking that this is an appropriate time for them to step back from service. So if someone was in that sort of a mindset, would they be able to, what would be the timeline that they would have to be able to get their resignation in, to also have their seat on the ballot?
So we would still have to, so ultimately I need to be notified, or the Board of Registrars needs to be notified by the select board. So depending, doesn't matter what other board it is. So
Right.
they would have to have their resignation into me in time for you folks to include that into the ballot. So
Okay.
we, it could be the same day that you're having a meeting, and it would have to fall into like that emergency category to add it, or if it was 48 hours ahead of time, that it could be coordinated.
Okay.
So as long as by September 1st, so I take that back. So if you met on the 26th and made a decision and notified me, if by chance some other board or some other question came up, as long as I received it by September 1st, that could go on.
Would we have to have a special election to notify you that we wanted to include it in the ballot, or it would just automatically be included?
So as long as I receive notice. Now, the thing with other boards is they have the ability to appoint somebody. So I would
Okay.
have to do a little research of whether or not where we are having an election, whether or not we could put that out there, or if it would like have to go through the appointment authority, in which if it's through the appointment authority, the remaining members of that board, along with the select board, would come together and go through a process of how they would like an appointment.
Okay. All right. Complicated, but that's why they pay you the big bucks, I guess.
Yeah.
So I know Mr. Milano, I had tried to call Mr. Wells over the weekend a couple times and we didn't end up connecting. Did you have a sense from him that he had a particular opinion that he wanted to share on this, or what his stance was in terms of thinking about a special election? Because I didn't speak with him directly.
Yeah, the sense I took away from Mr. Wells was yes, in terms of having an election. And I would certainly want him to speak to that to make sure I'm getting that right. And he was deferential to the town clerk on the recommended date.
Okay, well, given that he's deferential to the town clerk and that I think he would probably at least want to say his own 2 cents, knowing Mr. Wells. Is the board okay if we wait until next Tuesday to make a final decision on this? I don't think we have to rehash the whole thing again, but does that make sense?
Yes.
Mr. Daly
Yeah,
says.
it's too big of a decision not to have everybody speak to it.
I agree with that. So Ms. Galvin, maybe we'll try to put it early on the agenda like we've done tonight so that you can join us quickly and then leave us quickly as well.
I
Does that
said
sound
thank
good?
you. That sounds perfect. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Very good. Okay, so I think then that's where we'll leave it now on the special election. So we'll come back again next Tuesday with Mr. Wells in attendance and make a decision on that. Mr. Milano, the next agenda item are the committee assignments that are open right now, Policy Committee and Landing Committee.
Yes, both committees John Cohane served on, and now have a vacancy. The policy committee for the members is a board of two. So 2 select board members serve on that. Now we're down to a committee of 1. And then the landing committee has a number of other members on it, but typically the select board did have 2 members serving on that committee alongside the other members.
And could you remind us and the folks at home who are the existing members of the existing select board members on the 2 other committees?
Oh, sure. Chair Zoll is on the policy committee, and Mr. Wells is the other member on the landing committee.
So, in this, for the sake of discussion, and I'm obviously already on the policy committee, so I'm not going to nominate myself to do that. But I might float it out there that I think that this is I think we're kind of at a good opportunity as a board right now to start really thinking through what are some of our board policies that we want to have. That could include things like codes of conduct, other sorts of trainings that we might want to implement in terms of how we go about our business. So I think that it's that's the nerdy way of saying I think we could do some pretty good stuff on that committee if somebody was interested in joining it with me. But I'm not going to nominate anybody because it's me on the it's me on the other side. And feel free to nominate yourselves too.
Are these 2 openings that we could leave until we decide on the special election? Because I'll say right now, I'm on 4 committees. I don't think I'd have space for another. I believe member Haggerty's on a few as well. And it's, let's go on the assumption that we do have a special election. We would have a new member joining in November, and then what committees would they be on if we've already taken all the plush spots? So I wonder if we could leave these 2 open since they both already have at least 1 member serving. Or is that
So I would say my response, if you don't mind, Mr. Daly, in my thinking is I think for sure with the policy committee we could leave that to sit for a bit. With the landing committee, I think between the what we're doing at the farmers market there, as well as with the recent shooting incident at 88 Wharf, I think that committee is going to be a little bit busy, and I think it makes sense to have another member sitting on it. And since both of you are on several committees, I think I'm just policy committee, along with just the light duties of being chair. So I'm willing to nominate myself for the landing committee position, if that makes sense to both of you. I know Mr. Wells would be the other member there. I do that knowing that it is a committee comprised entirely of white men, and I am always loath to add myself to to that kind of an equation. But I want to respect the work that both of you guys are doing on the other committees, as well as some of the discussions that I've had with the residents at 88 Wharf about the incident. So I feel like I could add to that committee. But that's a very long-winded way of me nominating myself for the landing committee, but saying we can take the policy committee out of the equation, if that's fine with folks.
That's okay with me.
Yeah, works for me. I'd second that.
Okay, so we have a nomination then for me to join the landing committee, for Ben Zoll to be appointed to the landing committee. This is a roll call vote, unless there's any further discussion. So Mr. Daly,
Aye.
Ms. Hegarty,
Aye.
And I'll abstain. So that's me on the landing committee then. So we'll leave the policy committee open. And then, Mr. Daly, I think it's a great point. We could also think about after the election, to the point of, potentially having three newish members next year. Maybe we want to shuffle the committees around after this, if we do have a special election after that election. Okay. Uh, Town council services is our next item. And Mr. Milano, so Mr. Milano and I just spoke about this for a bit. I think it might make sense for me do you want to kick off and then I'll add, or should I summarize? I'm happy to summarize what our most immediate discussion was.
You can take it away, please. Thank you.
Okay. So I got a call in from Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane today, and I think there was some crossed wires in terms of their application, I think. And so this is I'm going to, I want to have this discussion in as sensitive a way as possible. But essentially, I think while many of us really appreciated working with Mr. Mello, and I think while his counsel was spot on in regarding what the outcomes of the MBTA communities process was going to be, I know that there were concerns not just from one side or the other in some of the methods that he used when he was explaining complicated issues at places like town meeting or even to some of us on the select board. So, I had a nice discussion with them today. Mr. Mello is really interested in being more of a litigator, I think, and less of serving as a general town council. And so they have asked, knowing that we're where we are in the process, if they might be able to put in an application with a different attorney other than Mr. Mello to apply for this role. So I'll leave it. Maybe Mr. Milano, I think there obviously we've had a long history with this firm, so I think there was a little backstory there. So maybe if you want to fill in any additional details, and then we can talk about. And this is another one again where Mr. Wells, I don't think he's submitted his written feedback yet, so we don't really know where he stands. And obviously, this is another one of these critical issues for the town. So, Mr. Milano, do you want to fill in anything that I might have missed there?
No, I think you captured in terms of where their request was at this time.
So I think what we can decide here with our group is whether or not we would want to open that process up for them to apply. Ms. Hegarty.
So if, changing the lead attorney on a proposal like that seems to be a pretty substantial change in the bid submission. So what would the mechanics of that look like so that, I don't know if that's like a violation of 30B or if another firm, say if we went with MHTL in the end, could another firm file like a protest or something like that? I guess my first question is, how does this actually work?
Sure. So just legal services are exempt from 30B. There's no applicable procurement law that the town is beholden to for this process. We distributed this as a request for qualifications rather than any kind of hard and fast request for proposals under 30B or any other applicable procurement law. So we wanted to be clear as to what the process was. And I'll note for one of the applicants, they had submitted for one lead attorney and then had to revise based on availability. But that was certainly done long before any interviews had commenced. And the firm actually also had updated their applicants based on feedback from the town. So I think that in terms of process, there's no process here stepping across in terms of the letter of law, in terms of the process that we followed to date. It would be a little bit of a change in terms of adding an interview at this point. But I think the way I did share the town kind of feedback on the first round of interviews was that we felt that the 3 firms that applied that did not currently work for the town were worth the board hearing, and that this board was familiar with and knew Peter and some of the other attorneys at MHTL, so an interview there wasn't as necessary. If that change is now coming forward, this board, in terms of what attorney they would submit as the lead, it would be unfamiliar. You wouldn't know that person, so it would certainly merit potentially an interview for that purposes. So I think that's the background on the law, and then process. I just wanted to fill in a little of the blanks as well.
And I want to, take some, some responsibility for where we are in this position too, because it was my call in conversations that we had with Mr. Milano about whether we wanted to bring 3 or 4 firms forward as finalists. And so I kind of the belief that it doesn't make sense to have a first round if there's no, if everyone gets through, and knowing what the sort of one of the main drawbacks would be from their proposal, I didn't suggest them for the second round. So that was my call, and perhaps I made that unilaterally, and we should have had that more of an open discussion at the meeting. I have wanted to approach this in a sensitive fashion again, because I think I have a lot of respect for Mr. Mello, and I don't want this to reflect poorly on him as an attorney. And so I think perhaps in erring a little bit too much on the side of caution there, wasn't as explicit as I could have been in my feedback on their initial application. So for my part, I think it would make sense, given the long history of the town with the firm and the fact that we kind of miscommunicated with them about our feedback on their initial submission, would like to offer them the opportunity to interview. I know that that's tough with vacations in August and everything, but I do think it would make sense, knowing that we're not going to make a decision on this until Mr. Wells has had the opportunity to at least weigh in, which is not until the 26th. How do you guys feel about that?
I'm okay with it. I mean, my biggest concern, I keep forgetting that legal services are not part of 30B. My brain is always oriented around 30B. So if it, I would just hate to have the town have to deal with like a bid protest or something, or yeah, I mean it's fine.
How does this impact any timeline that we had laid out for the previous candidates?
Well, I think, Nick, do you want to go ahead first?
No, sorry, you answer. I was just trying to think of an answer.
I was gonna say we weren't gonna be making a decision until next week anyways, with Richard being present. So I think, and then after that, our next meeting would be on the 9th. So we don't have, it wouldn't be that much of a delay, I don't think, for the other services. But I mean, optimally, we could try to get an interview on the books in the next the next week or so.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add to that, I
Please,
think
go ahead.
there isn't, generally there's no impending deadline that anyone we need to worry about. It just is about that town meeting prep, and we would certainly want whoever will be town council by the time we're at town meeting and town meeting is working through the warrant articles, to have an opportunity to review the articles, opine on them, suggest changes or tweaks in terms of the context or the preparation around them. So I think, getting to a place, and the other piece of this is, even if the board does kind of select a firm, appoint a different firm, reappoint MHTL, there may be a little bit more paperwork involved in terms of getting a letter of engagement squared away, nailing down fee negotiations, particularly in the case of a new firm. So, yes, a decision could be made in the next week or two, but then there is a little bit more homework that is required. And MHTL has been, as I've said, all along, has been always there and support and working seamlessly with us through any number of issues. But I just do note that the town meeting deadline and having the signed bylaw reviewed by whoever council will be, having the lighting trespass bylaw reviewed by whoever will be town council at town meeting. That's more my imperative deadline. So that might have been more than you asked for, but that's the main kind of deadline that we have. All of the litigation that is going on, I think we would expect MHTL to continue on that work because it's pretty far along at this point. So that's just the other kind of thing that's more pressing.
I think MHTL has earned the option of has earned the interview based on their years of service with us. But I also think it kind of reflects poorly on us to add them this late in the game.
I agree with that, and I take responsibility for that. I think I think there's other cooks in the kitchen for sure, but I probably should have just said yes to having all four come forward the first time.
Yeah, so out of respect for the 4 decades that they put in with the town, I certainly think them calling up and asking is certainly within their right, and I would almost feel it would be a disservice to not give them the chance. But I wish this had gone a little differently.
So I agree with that on both counts. I guess, Nick, in terms of scheduling an interview, maybe what we could do is, I think we should ask them to, observe, the professional courtesy of not watching the riveting Zoom interviews that we've done with the other three firms. And then optimally, we could try to schedule something as quickly as possible. I don't know if Ms. Haggerty, Mr. Daly, you guys want to look at your calendars and see if we could find an hour that at least works for the three of us, and then if it worked, Richard could watch the interview if he wasn't able to join.
On that, man, on that point, if this was in any other scenario, and you had a candidate coming in, and they could have watched all 3 interviews beforehand, right? Hypothetically, and then asked to be added, right? Is this fair to the others that we've had in our process, right? If we had our rubrics together and our process together, even with the history, is it fair to say that we're going to add another candidate after the others have worked with us in good faith and submitted everything, and after MHTL was not selected to go further?
It is
Ms. Haggerty.
problematic. No, it's definitely problematic, and I think that's part of why I was asking, like, if it's not 30B, so it seems like Administrator Milano mentioned, there are no laws sort of governing this. It's like one of those things, it seems like there's not a law or a policy that governs this. However, is it a good practice? Maybe not. It's definitely not, like, I don't think it would pass muster in other procurement situations for the fact of, it's not necessarily a level playing field at this point.
Yeah, because even me right now saying that I'm willing to open it up, given their history, that already kind of skews the playing field, right? It's based on a history and knowledge of the town and an existing relationship, which we did not, did not weigh as heavily a month ago.
I think those are all important points. So one thought that I have too is that maybe this is because I'm the son of a lawyer, but lawyers tend to know which they can anticipate questions pretty well. So I don't know that any of the questions that we posed in the interview process would have not been questions that a prepared legal firm would have been expecting to answer. So in terms of like, do they have a leg up on whether or not, they get a jump on what the questions are? I think if you've been reading the Boston Globe or, and doing a little bit of homework, you would know what kind of issues we face as a town. I do take the point about the process. And so I wonder, one option could be that we could think of this still as a bit of a semifinals, and then if we do an MHTL interview, we've already sent, well, at least the three of us have sent in our written feedback on the other three firms. We could decide, would it make sense to bring back two firms as finalists and ask them, an important question or two, or if after the interviews we've all agreed that one of the initial three candidates were great, then we don't have to do that. But I think we probably should identify first if we would want to bring back two or not. But this is just sort of top of my head what I think might make sense. So I'm open to comments. Mr. Milano.
Just I think hearing all the comments and really agreeing with them in terms of process here, I think there would be a way to set this up as slightly different. A lot of the questions that were asked were, talking about introducing the firm to the town, and where these other applicants were new town council firms. We were trying to get an understanding, the board was trying to get an understanding of what their capacity was in certain issues, what their history was, what their backgrounds were, what their approaches were to certain issues. And one way that might do this slightly different could be to acknowledge that, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of familiarity between the town and the firm, less so than the town and whoever they would assign as the new lead. So perhaps it's a slightly different approach and more of an introduction and more of a slightly different interview, because some of the questions will have already been answered and known. So I just throw that out there as a slightly different way of looking at it, if that is helpful. But please ignore me if that just makes it more confusing.
We'll never just ignore you, Nick, even if we humor you sometimes. But I thought that was a good suggestion there. Actually, I think that's an important differential between the other three interviews and this one. So sorry, there's no easy answer on this one, folks. But are we comfortable with moving ahead? Would we need a motion, I think, to schedule an interview, and then we could go ahead and do that? Or we can just go ahead and schedule it, Mr. Milano.
A consensus of the board is fine, I think, for myself. I would just note that a couple of the attorneys at the firm are all working very hard on a submittal to Mass DEP for a Friday deadline for the Lower Guile Turf Field project for that process. So it may be helpful to look to Monday at the earliest. I don't want to put words in their mouth as to who they had assigned, but I just do know that a couple of the key players there are hard at work on that issue. So
I'm okay with trying to do something on Monday. Would that day work for folks? I'm assuming we could try to do it either the morning, or actually no, I'm at the dentist in the morning, but I'm pretty open after 2:30. How do other folks look on Monday?
Monday, the 25th.
Yeah.
I could do a 4 p.m.
Yeah.
or
around
after 5.
Yeah, that time would work for me as well.
That would also work for me. So maybe Mr. Milano, you want to check with Mr. Wells and then also check with MHTL and see if we could get them in on a Monday, and then we could have the discussion on Tuesday still.
I will do that.
Okay. Anything else on the town council stuff? I appreciate everyone's thoughts on this and their approach. Okay, great. going ahead then, oops, I lost my agenda. We're on, the Route 28. Mr. Milano.
I'm gonna abstain, or I'm gonna recuse myself.
Yes, that's fine, Ms. Hegarty. Mr. Milano, do you want to give us an update?
Yes, I just will note that the board with her recusal would no longer have a quorum for any decisions, but I can make a public update as I think that's helpful for the public discussion.
Yes.
The so MassDOT had submitted a brief memo to the select board regarding potential changes to Route 28 Randolph Ave, which would incorporate a potential road diet. They've offered a couple different ways that would look, and solicited some feedback from the town. We posted that memo to the town website alongside a lot of the historical information around work and studies of Randolph Ave to date. So that's all available on the website. MassDOT is and has requested to be on the agenda for the August 26th select board meeting to pick the conversation back up. Town staff and a couple others are joining MassDOT for a call on Wednesday afternoon to solicit further feedback and to ensure that key points that folks have raised to the board and to staff and others is shared with MassDOT, and that they have a chance to provide us the latest update. So the overall picture is that they are planning to return and provide further updates and solicit further feedback at the August 26th select board meeting on potential changes to Randolph Ave in the light of some of the crashes that have been occurring on that street.
I know we have question for you, Nick. I know we have posted MassDOT's I think their responses and that layout of all the different options for road diet online. Will they also be presenting that to us live and walking through what all of those options would look like so the residents can hear it directly from them?
That would be my expectation, that they would provide a thorough kind of update as to what this might look like in
Yeah.
pros and cons and potential impacts. I think we'll know a little bit more after meeting with them on Wednesday afternoon. And if you have specific requests as to what they certainly address, we can make sure we provide them that feedback ahead of the 26th. And that goes for any members of the public that have questions or comments that they'd like. They can submit them to my office, and we'll turn those over as well.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Daly.
No, I'm just particularly the timeline they laid out of whichever one of these options is selected, or that we move forward with, timeline of construction and implementation, and then the testing is the thing I would like to see really laid out for us.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm heartened with the fact that they're really kind of on the ball here, and they're getting us suggestions, and they're coming back to meet. Just to echo both you, Mr. Daly and Mr. Milano, that if you go to the Town of Milton website, it's on the front page. If you scroll down a little bit, where the discussion is and the access to the documents. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in this to have a look, and if they have any questions, to make sure that they get them to Mr. Milano so that he can ask them either on Wednesday, or we can ask them at the public setting. I think maybe what we may want to have it makes the importance of the issue makes me feel like we should probably have a public weigh-in session that sort of goes beyond citizen speak. If we're going to make sort of a decision on where we fall, so we could potentially have sort of an initial, this is the direction that we're leaning, and then ask the questions of MassDOT on next Tuesday, and then in early September we can have a public forum, or if people want us to make decisions straight away, we can do that too. I think please let us know through email or through calling us if you feel strongly one way or the other. But we definitely want to make sure that people have the ability to input on this, and we also don't want to drag our feet on something that is such a huge safety issue. Anything further on that, Mr. Daly?
No, I was just thinking about, as you asked for public input, I guess the email would be the best way for us to collect those.
Probably at SB
Before.
was townofmilton.gov now, right?
No, that's a key difference. Townofmilton.org still works. MiltonMA.gov will be the official one, but there's plenty of time before that happens. But don't confuse the two. Is the key point.
Yeah. Well, every so often I get an email for the Milton, Ontario government officials, so I wouldn't feel bad sending them a couple. All right. So then I guess, how do we let Ms. Hegarty know that she can come back in? I'll just text her maybe. Oh, there she is. Never mind. Welcome back. All right, so we're going to go then to item number 10, meetings with department heads and scheduling. Mr. Milano, we've started on this a little bit. Do you want to give us an update?
Sure. So, we've had the police chief in and the DPW director in for conversations. I think we would likely extend the next invite to the fire chief. And from there, if there are specific departments the board wants to hear from sooner rather than later as we go through the list here, please let me know, or you can let me know right now who board members would like to hear from. Certainly would, in terms of going down the line here, I think Council on Aging with Christine Stanton was next on, or coming up close on my list. But my current immediate plan would have been to line up with Chief Madden and then with Christine, and from there I am open to suggestions or tweaks to that if preferred.
Comments from the members?
That list is okay with me. I think the fire chief certainly should be next.
Yeah, I think the fire chief should be next as well. When would it make sense to have, like, I'm sensitive to the fact that school is just getting back in session and he's joining us on an interim basis while we find a new superintendent, but I don't know what folks think about bringing Superintendent Phelan in at some point, or if we feel like we already talked to him enough.
No, I think that's a good idea. I think it would make sense to have that as like a joint select board school committee meeting, because I don't want to, step on their toes, but we could
Right.
potentially do a look ahead to the school year, maybe towards the later in September or October after they're kind of up and running, which wouldn't interfere, I don't think, with the schedule that Mr. Milano's put forward. Would that make sense for you guys? I can reach out to the chair of the school committee and suggest that too, and see if they think that's a good thought. But given how important the schools are, I do think it's definitely worth having a meeting, and particularly given his interim role, I think he may feel he can share information with us more freely than he might otherwise be able to.
Yeah, I think we also, with eyes to the school committee meeting, we should probably schedule whether back to school or early indicators in school meeting as well, to see how the impacts of the override, the impacts of budgets, and what they're seeing in the schools. I don't know if the school committee may be the best to answer that, or the superintendent, or perhaps some of the principals, but if we set that on the calendar as well.
Maybe in advance of it too, the finance committee of the select board and the finance committee of the school board have met previously, and it might make sense for those two boards to meet jointly prior to the bigger meeting to kind of hash through some of the numbers, and then that could help inform some of the discussion as well.
Okay.
Mr. Milano, does that sound right to you?
Yes, only just will correct slightly that the budget coordination committee, we're awaiting the two school committee designees to get that meeting rolling. So I think that would make that, in lieu of what you suggested, that would be swapped
that
in.
meeting.
Right. But
Okay.
same point, same process.
Well, maybe I'll nudge Ms. Serio on that as well, so that that committee can meet prior to that larger meeting.
And I know the school committee's meeting on Wednesday. So
Okay, very good. Any further discussion on this one? Okay.
Well, I think, I
Oh,
mean,
yes, Ms. Haggerty.
if we had a planning director right now, I would say it would be good to have the planning department in, but I don't know if there are any opportunities for primer on, planning activities for the board. I'm thinking we should probably wait, but that would be where I would go.
Mr. Milton, I don't know if you have an update on that process.
We are hopefully working through an offer and should hopefully have an announcement soon on a planning director, but still no news yet.
Okay. Well, we won't make them feel like they have to come straight away to us, but we'll be very looking forward to meeting that person if it all goes well. Okay, moving on, we've got the October 27th, 2025 Fall Special Town Meeting warrant articles. Anything new for us on this, Mr. Milano?
Yes, just in the light of the conversation earlier, if the board seems to be leaning towards a special election, and we can pick this back up on the 26th, but we should, my recommendation rather to the board would be to increase the appropriation for the election and registration budget by what we hope is a high estimate of $60,000 for the unexpected costs of a potential special election. So I think we can have this article ready for the 26th and give the warrant committee, and I already alluded to the possibility that it might come when I met with the warrant committee last week. But that would be the one more significant change. Ideally, free cash will be certified well in advance of the October special town meeting. It's not as of today, but the recommendation would be to appropriate an additional $60,000 from free cash to the election and registration budget. We do have the reserve fund funded for fiscal 26. It just would be very early to utilize that funding from there. So my preference, and obviously following suit, my recommendation would be that we have a separate warrant article to appropriate free cash for that purpose. But again, we can close the loop on that after the board decides to go ahead with the special election or not. Otherwise, the articles that are, and I included in the packet a draft warrant with all of the articles. The articles have been submitted to the select board, two of which have been voted to go onto the warrant, rather three of which have. Looking at the agenda, it's Roman numeral 2 and 3 and Roman numeral 5 have been approved for the warrant. The select board still needs to work through its approach to the alcohol on town property warrant article. The Climate Action Planning Committee submitted Roman numeral 6 related to climate and greenhouse gas emissions goals for the town. The School Building Committee submitted Roman numeral 7, which is to request that the legislature passes a change to the home rule petition related to the school project land transactions to push back the so-called reverter clause on that for 5 years. The Master Plan Implementation Committee did submit an article related to making a report at the town meeting and then recommending that the town meeting set up a new committee to manage the implementation of the current master plan and suggest updates and scope of changes to the master plan going forward. That would be a 9-member committee with 3 appointments from the planning board, the select board, and the town moderator each. And lastly, there are 2 warrant articles from the planning board related to zoning bylaw amendments. And I just noticed now, looking at the agenda, they're listed as general bylaws. Those would be zoning bylaws, one for traffic impact mitigation for projects that cross certain thresholds, be required to make impact fee payments or other mitigation on site for their projects. And then the last one is a sign bylaw change to really update that sign bylaw. It's pretty lengthy. It's worth a read. It's one the building commissioner is looking at. We would have town council review as well. So that's the lay of the land for the warrant articles as they stand. The one major change would be an additional article related to the budget I mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Any questions from the members? Mr. Milano, if I may, on the alcohol on town property, this is something that I know that Mr. Wells felt strongly about. Have we received any updates from him about on the language based on any of the previous conversations?
Not to the point where I would feel comfortable speaking to it. I think the prior comments have more been, have the bylaw be less restrictive and let the select board have more authority to make decisions on a case by case basis on certain kind of requirements on different locations. So I think that was the one takeaway, but I don't want to speak for him because I can't say with certainty his viewpoint one way or the other.
So, given that this is a October, end of October town meeting, that is a bylaw that won't really come into use until for 9 months, I would imagine, if we manage to get it on the warrant. Until the weather warmed up, in other words.
Correct, because the other piece to keep in mind is that if approved on October 27th, it then goes to the municipal law unit, and that review can take 90 days. So that pushes that. So, but by the same token, if it's approved in May, that same kind of timeline does apply.
Right.
So it's both ways.
And is there any reason to think that we're going to need to have a special town meeting in February? I'm not aware of any reason now, but I know that I'm not always attuned to everything.
Nothing is on my radar. And last year we did, but we did not have one in the winter, right?
Right.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. So I guess we're kind of at a crossroads with this article. I don't want to shove anything at the warrant committee too late, and we're kind of up against it already on the printing deadline. Is that right, Mr. Milano?
The warrant committee has basically the month of September to finish their work.
Okay.
So it's really the end of September where we start to run up against the deadline for them to vote on and comment on the articles.
So we could still look at language next week, decide that it was worth sticking it in the warrant, and it's not going to interfere too much on the timeline.
I think if the board was pretty firmly behind language next week, yes. I think if it was, we should change this, we should change that, and then we're making edits and then bringing it back again for another approval, I think that's where it gets tricky. If we're pretty clear and complete next week, I think that's okay. And the board could, defer to the warrant committee to say, if, take this up last, if you'd like, or however you'd want to stride it up and let them kind of work out their process from there. But I would expect that should be really the last chance at this warrant.
Okay. What I would welcome comments from Mr. Daly and Ms. Hegarty. I don't require them, but I would welcome them.
I think we should submit what's ready to go.
So, if we had language, so I guess this is maybe my my proposal. If Mr. Daly and Ms. Hegarty and I are all willing to put this on the agenda for next week, if Mr. Wells can take the time to adjust the language based on the citizens' feedback, maybe working with you, Mr. Milano, that we've gotten from both the chamber as well as other folks who are interested, and we feel good about if we agree to put it on the agenda next week, if we like the language, then we put it on the warrant. If we don't like the language, we just we say it's going to need more time, and we don't try to put it on the warrant to avoid last minute changes to the warrant. Does that sound okay for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to adhere to and stay tight with our own processes, right? And I feel like it's like Groundhog Day, like we keep having this discussion. And I'm
Well,
sure you feel like it even more
I
than
had a
me.
nice conversation with the
Yeah,
chair of the warrant committee, and he was being
yeah,
very complimentary about how we gotten everything in. So I do feel like
yeah.
we can sneak one thing in, maybe, but I don't know
I
that we're
know.
able to do much
Yeah,
more.
I have a hard time. I have a hard time with not adhering to process because there are so many other things in our work that cannot be black and white. um
Totally.
so yeah, I mean, I think I just think we have to just stick the landing.
Mr. Daly?
Yeah, I would say submit. And if there are edits, I think we're assuming there would be, then those would come after, but I wouldn't want to hold it up any longer.
Okay. Mr. Milano, do you want me to communicate that to Mr. Wells?
I can take it.
Okay.
I'll follow up with him. I'll just note that the issue here, I think, is the article we got in on time. It's just the select board trying to wade through and get to a final place on it. And we do have two different versions that I think ultimately accomplish the same goals. It's just they do it in different ways, and some require it in the bylaw themselves, and the others, let the select board take it up on a case by case. So I do think the differences are fairly narrow. So closing the loop and getting to a final place shouldn't be the longest conversation in the world. It's really going to be a policy question
So we'll do
ultimately.
that. So we'll do that next week then when we meet. Okay.
Yes, and we'll
We
have
have to be prepared to call balls and strikes
and
on that
optimally we get
decision.
and
Sorry.
if we get the materials in, everyone can read them in advance and basically come through with their I think instead of doing edits on the fly, just if you've got solid edits you want to propose straight
Yep.
away, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll okay it or not. Sound good to everyone?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. I am going to then I guess we'll close the warrant. Do we need a motion to close the warrant?
Mr. Chair, it's just more of the board has not officially voted to put a number of these articles yet
Okay.
on the warrant, so I
What do we
think
have to?
they're listed, but let me just double check how we spelled it out in the prepared motion identifies the one that need to be voted to approve. You can choose to include the one for the appropriation for the election registrations budget at this point, or you can kick that one out to next week if you prefer.
We can just include it and then we can always delete it. It's easier. Mr. Daly, were you ready to make that motion?
Yes, move to approve the following articles for inclusion on the October 27th, 2025 special town meeting, subject to any edits by town council. One, article amend fiscal year 2026 appropriations, election and registration budget, the general bylaws amendment, chapter 105, alcohol on town property, the climate action planning committee, community white greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals, and to amend Chapter 147 of the Acts of 2024 to change the reverter clause date from June 30th, 2028 to June 30th, 2033 regarding the school project land transactions, the Master Plan Implementation Committee report and recommendation, the General Bylaws Amendment 275-20 traffic impact mitigation, the General Bylaws Amendment 275-3.25 signs.
I'll just offer a friendly amendment that those are, I think, were printed incorrectly, but it should be zoning bylaw amendments, the last two. And I'll second. Any further discussion? Mr. Daly?
Aye.
Ms. Hegarty?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay. Thank you for catching that, Mr. Milano. So I'll close the warrant. We don't need a motion to close that, do we? No.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Sorry.
Oh, we do. Sorry. I'll have a motion to close the warrant.
Second.
All in favor? Mr. Daly?
Aye.
Ms. Hegarty?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, we are now on to East Milton Fire Station RFP visioning session, Mr. Milano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this ties back to comments made earlier about a planning director. As we remain without a planning director, and as the board has been interested in soliciting feedback in terms of a potential project or reuse or disposition of the East Milton Fire Station, I did engage and reach out to MAPC for some visioning assistance. They've prepared or are preparing a scope of work for the board's review, and I'll bring that back for the 26th. But the idea here would be, a community meeting with more kind of the planner perspective incorporated better than I would be able to in terms of being able to facilitate conversations, seek ideas, and guide that. So if the board's comfortable with MAPC helping facilitate such a visioning workshop and community meeting, then I'll bring that scope of work to the board for review and potential approval at our next meeting. Again, I think what the process that we would want to lay out is some potential more concrete ideas for folks to respond to, but to have a good back and forth with members of the public about what folks would like to see there, and that would then inform that RFP process a little bit further.
Great. Any questions from the members?
No questions, just that I think that sounds like a good idea, and I think MAPC's done well at helping us with that in the past.
Great. Okay, so I think just Mr. Daly, sorry you took yourself off mute.
No comment. Just
Okay.
agree with what member Hegarty shared.
All right, so I think just continue ahead with that, Mr. Milano, for now, and
Sure,
we'll
I'll bring it back.
Great. So then item number 13, Quarry Hills lease extension with the City of Quincy, House Bill 3897.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. At our last meeting, the board had requested I reach out and have an open dialogue with Quarry Hills. I can confirm that I reached out and had a conversation with Tom O'Connell from Quarry Hills, and he is open to meeting with the board, hearing explaining the project, talking about Quarry Hills, how they utilize the Milton portion of the property and the Quincy use portion of the property. This bill that is currently working its way through the legislature is a home rule petition submitted by the City of Quincy, so to approval of the Quincy City Council, and would seek to extend their lease on the Quincy portion of the land, not the Milton portion, just the Quincy portion for a further 50 years. The Milton lease is a 50-year lease, but we're about 20 years into that. So there's about 30 years left on the Milton side. So they're open to that. I think it would be also helpful for the board potentially discuss this a little bit, perhaps in executive session if we're talking about the value of real property as a separate kind of track here. And I did mention to Mr. O'Connell some conversation that some of the feedback in terms of land, and if there's land that they're not utilizing, that perhaps we could talk about updating where those lease premises are and aren't. And they would start looking at their maps, and we could do so likewise to keep that, at least open the conversation and the dialogue on that front.
Great. Comments or questions from the members?
Thank you for starting that, Nick.
Go ahead, Mr. Daly.
I said thank you for starting that, Nick. I think
Oh.
it's kind of been out there, so we'll follow up when we sit down with Quarry Hills to talk about those kind of the land that's available and if they're willing to change the borders.
I think scheduling a future executive session also with this topic makes sense, just to have it at least. And if we need to use it, if we don't need to use it, we don't need to use it.
I can do that. Would the board like to invite Quarry Hills to a meeting so that they can provide an update on their project and what they're proposing for Quincy?
That would be optimal, I think.
Okay.
How is our agenda looking for the 9th of September?
I haven't really got that far, but we had the 26th is certainly
I know the 26th
very
is quite
full.
full.
The 9th we haven't deferred much yet. I think that I'll reach out about that date at the very least, because I think time is important on this front as well.
Great. And I didn't want to suggest the 23rd because I'm actually going to raise a point about that when we get to our scheduling our upcoming meetings. All right, so that sounds like you've got your direction there, Mr. Milano. So we'll have that meeting, and then I think we wouldn't want to we could have that executive session either on the 9th or even at a later date from that. I don't think we need to have that before we have that meeting, unless folks disagree. Okay. Then we'll do select board retreat date, item 14. So this is something that we had been struggling to schedule. I feel that it's extremely important for us as a board to get a little bit of time to talk about the things that we want to accomplish. I think my hope is that we could look at our calendars and find a weekend in September that might work for all of us to sit down for at least say 3 hours somewhere to kind of talk about our hopes for the coming year. If everyone's okay with that, we could try to do that right now. Mr. Milano.
I'm going to raise this. I think
Sure.
there are two ways to approach this one, but if we do have a new member in November, it may be helpful to actually either pick a single date that's after that new member comes on, or really select two, so that we're working on this now, getting the ball rolling, and then bringing that new member, whoever that is, kind of in as well, and soliciting their perspective on goals and objectives for the year, and as well as all the traditional kind of onboarding and transition that I think would be helpful coming out of this. So I just would plug that as potentially grabbing two dates, if possible. I would agree with you in terms of pushing this too far down the timeline, where we're approaching September very quickly. So I agree with getting something in and rolling now. But I just would like to plug a potential second date as well.
I think it makes sense to have a follow-up date if we do have a special election, so we can and then optimally too, I don't know that we would need to set that this far out, but we could probably keep it in mind as something we'd want to do, and then we'd also want to be able to accommodate the new members' schedule if possible. But November and December may hopefully be a little bit less busy after the election. You never know. But knowing that we've got, some things that are hanging over us, like safety on Route 28, for example, some of the things that have been happening in local government, thinking about trainings and ways to lower the temperature in town. I think we would be remiss if we didn't try to set a time in September to talk through some of those issues. So it sounds like you agree with that, Mr. Milano.
Certainly, and I've reached out to a well-recommended facilitator if the board is interested in having that as well.
That's a great suggestion. Mr. Daly or Ms. Haggerty, thoughts?
So I have a busy September. The weekend of the 12th and the weekend of the 20th are both off the board for me, but I could do the weekend of September 27th, and I could do the weekend of October 4th.
Mr. Daly, how does your calendar look for the 27th or the 4th?
The 4th is better for me. The 4th would work.
All right. I believe I could also do the 4th. And so let's set that as the date broadly. Mr. Milano, maybe when you're in touch with Mr. Wells, if folks are sort of generally available, if he knew if he could do the morning or the afternoon, it'd be helpful to know. And then hopefully a facilitator would be available as well. All right, are we okay with that as a, go ahead. I don't think we need a motion on that.
No, I will follow up. And so just so the board knows, I spoke to Jeff Nutting, who is the former longtime town administrator in the town of Franklin, has been doing a number of interim positions and has done a number of board facilitations. Came highly recommended when I was requesting recommendations from colleagues. I'll share with you his background, and we can finalize that if the date works for everybody. And I'll keep the board just updated. I'll talk to Mr. Wells and to him, and I'll keep the board updated.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Okay. Well, this naturally goes on to item 15, select board policies and code of conduct. So this is something that we alluded to earlier in our discussion, and both in terms of Mr. Cohen's resignation as well as in terms of thinking about the policy committee. So I don't know, Mr. Milano, if you have some opening thoughts here. This is something that we've also asked you to look into in terms of finding trainings through MMA on some issues. But I welcome comments from the members too. But maybe Mr. Milano, you can just let us know where that process stands first.
So I think just touching on the select board policies and the code of conduct question, I think in looking at a couple of code of conducts that I found elsewhere, a lot of what is repeated in code of conducts is included in the select board's already approved policies. The policies are mostly one-page policies, and what I think is there just isn't one kind of code of conduct to turn to. So I think that would be potentially a helpful revision to the policies, would be to maybe pull some policies or some piece of the policies together into one kind of standing code of conduct. Because I think for the most part, the policies cover what you would expect or what you see. It's just not really spelled out clearly in a one pager as an overall conduct, and could pull in a couple of additional items. That's the initial feedback. And then in terms of training for board members, I've been going through kind of potential opportunities through whether insurance or workplace trainers that the town has used before or has relied upon in the past, and other communities highly recommend. I don't have a report yet on terms of the best person for that. Probably should have better news by this time next week. The chair and I spoke briefly about this, and it would be helpful just to nail down exactly what the board would like to come out of that. And I'll just note I'm sorry, I'll end it there. More direct feedback on kind of what members are looking for would help me finalize that. But no, we've been looking for potential options for elected officials in Milton.
Ms. Haggerty.
So the thought that comes to mind for me is, how it's kind of like, how do we want to pull this apart? And I think that, maybe some kind of synthesis, as Mr. Milano is suggesting, combined with, what we're going to discuss at our retreat, may be a good idea. I think we have to get on the table the concerns or challenges that we see, that we have witnessed, over the various timeframes of our collective tenures. Do we have certain culture problems? Do we have inclusivity issues? I think we need to get that out there, and then map our action steps to that, because we need a vision for the kind of board that we want to be, and what's the what's the best code of conduct and what's the best culture for the executive team of the town.
Yeah, I think Nick, in what you're saying, that if it maps and matches some of the forms that we already signed, then if we're adding something, then perhaps in our onboarding process, maybe that's where we're adding to it. And saying that when you're onboarded, whether to the select board or some of our other elected positions, that is explicitly stated that there are certain behaviors that are expected of the officials. Now, we certainly don't have a way to, we don't have a way to like punish people or sanction people or anything, but that it is more explicit that when you are in any of these seats, that you are, a representative of the town, and your behavior and your decorum and the way that you interact, not only with your board members, but town staff, committees, town meeting members, all of these things. And so that it is sort of pulled out and made much more explicit that there's an expectation around us and our roles beyond the policy pieces.
Go ahead, Mr. Milano, if you want to.
No, I was just saying that's helpful as a starting place. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think, basically, I think we're kind of combining two topics here, but that's okay. They're pretty much related. So I think on the code of conduct piece, I do think having it so that I think maybe pulling out what we've already got as approved policy as kind of a sample code of conduct would be very helpful. And then we can see if there are elements that we would like to add beyond what's already on that document. And then I think in terms of the trainings, so I mean, again, I feel like it's important to say that we have, seen an uptick in incidents with town staff. We've seen, we've seen comments that suggest, racial profiling, at least, or something of that nature. So I do think having an explicit part of a training be around what unconscious bias or bystander to upstander. There are some specific trainings in that space that could let people know basically how to become more self-aware themselves, and also how to react or respond when they see potentially things going south, and doing that in a productive way. Those would be things that I think would be very helpful to be included in a training. But I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to also share their thoughts about things that would be useful to bring into a training like this. Is that the sort of feedback, Mr. Milano, that you're looking for?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And what I have found just to be a little bit unique about what we're trying to find here is the elected component, because I think some of the trainings that we bring into town hall, that we bring into other departments along these lines, is pretty much, for a certain, employee or manager kind of audience. And this is a slightly different spin on that, where if it's elected official coming to a meeting, it's a public meeting. And now we're talking about, we're not talking about interpersonal in terms of a person sitting across the table making a comment that is heard and responded to unfairly, but maybe somebody sitting at home or some other situation, or a member of staff who isn't present in the room. So I think that's trying to find the right kind of person who can touch on those points is where we've been focusing our efforts at.
My question is, so it's also my understanding on the elected component that there's no sort of compulsory participation, correct? I don't think it means we shouldn't offer it, but
Correct.
yeah, not in the same way that someone who's employed. I mean, I don't think that's a reason for us to not offer this in the elected space, because I think what also makes it tricky, to your point, Nick, about the having the elected element to it and the public meeting point, but at the same time too, it's like we are in other people's work habitat in a way that it's definitely eye-opening for me. As a public employee, I don't have quite as many elected officials, running around in my space as I do work day to day. So it makes me really appreciate what you all do day in and day out. And I think, for me, I really hope we can find a way to appropriately thread that needle, because the way that we behave and the way that we conduct ourselves is not just, it is not just politics. We're literally in somebody's workspace, and that's 8 hours of somebody's day that we should not be bringing toxicity into. It's those waking hours where you're even away from your family. You're like your work colleagues you sometimes see more than you see your family. So it's a big deal for us to be in this space, and to make sure that we're bringing our best, when we work with the employees of the town.
So it sounds like, Mr. Milano, do you have enough feedback from us here on what we're kind of looking for on the training side?
I do, yes, thank you.
Okay. And I think, everyone should always be in the spirit of, I can learn more about myself and be a little bit better. And I think I know that just as well as anybody else. So I think this is really important to continue to pursue. So let's go. Oh, all right. We're gonna already hear Mr. Milano, Town Administrator's report.
Thank you. Apologize, I was running a little late. I am out for the week, away with my family. So I missed the opening discussion, but I did just want to note Mr. Cohen's resignation. And we did, when we put out the comments from the town and put it on the website and the news flash, I just wanted to note that my comment there in terms of his approach to the board, particularly around his work on the finance committee and working with both town and schools to help us get through last year's override, was instrumental to that. And I just wanted to take a moment to recognize his service, and particularly his efforts around that, and thank him for that. In terms of town stuff, the Cunningham Collycott Library renovation has been going on all summer. So the first phase of that project, which is taking place this year, is to convert what had been the library in Cunningham Collycott to 4 additional classrooms and offices. That work started basically the first day teachers were gone. A moving company was there, and the next day the walls are being demoed and it was being taken apart. It's now been all put back together. We expect that project to be complete with just some touch-up work done this time next week. So BC Construction was the contractor on it. They came in and did this work very quickly, very efficiently, working a lot of Saturdays. The owner's project manager and design team earned a lot of credit, as does the Consolidated Facilities Department, Tom McCarthy, Bob Pattison from School IT. I'm going to knock on some wood here because the project's not quite done yet, but they are putting in flooring and wrapping things up. So that was they call it a summer slammer for a reason. There's a lot of work to get done. They have to come back next year for phase 2, which would be converting the 4th floor space and Cunningham into the new library. So that they have a second half of work that is not yet complete to be done, planned around next summer. So just wanted to provide an update on that project as folks will start to see their good work next week to add space in the schools. Year-end closeout is underway. The auditors were in town hall last week, and they're doing some work this week. So our financial year-end process is well underway. We did have a ratings call with S&P Global Ratings. Milton presently has a AAA rating from S&P, which helps us when we go to issue debt to try to secure as low rate as possible. We had a ratings call on Friday, went really well. Nothing out of the conversation to indicate any change to our rating, but obviously that is not final. We expect to hear sometime next week. But spent about an hour on the phone talking about the town's finances, and we'll see a ratings report issued about a week from today. I believe I did mention this at the July 22nd meeting, but if not, Michael White is the new building commissioner. He started July 14th, has been doing yeoman's work and helping get through some older permit applications, getting those out the door, and working through potential bylaw changes. So just want to, again, just mention him and welcome them on board. That is really it for me this evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Not too much from the chair's report. I know the David Chestnut Jazz Festival was held after our last meeting. I was unfortunately out of town, but I heard great things. The September 5th is coming. The first Friday of September is going to be a chamber of event in association with the Milton Arts Center on the East Milton Deck Park there, which is always a good time. So hope that people can come out for that. Among all of their duties that they do, one of the most maybe rewarding duties for the fire department happened this past week when they helped a little baby get born on Adams Street who couldn't quite wait to get to the hospital. So we congratulate the parents there and the fire team for their hard work. Maybe another famous person born on Adams Street became a president of the United States. So you never know who's going to grow up to be what. I want to then turn over to public comment response. Members, anything about the public comment that you want to respond to? I think seeing none of you taking yourselves off mute, I think we did talk about Randolph Ave. We did talk about the attorneys, and we also talked about the special elections.
I do think, Mr. Chairzol, I do think there is a point for us to perhaps engage with or follow up with the superintendent or the school committee on the changes in the bus stops.
Yeah, that was that's true. That came up as part of the Route 28.
Yeah.
And I did see that. I know that is a school committee place, but knowing that the school committee, I think that's a great point, Mr. Daly, knowing the school committee is going to be meeting on Wednesday, and then knowing that we're already going to be talking about a joint meeting, I might send a note over or contact the chair and ask if we could include that in a joint discussion in the future. But hopefully, I mean, I don't want to make hopefully they're looking into that issue now if there's a safety issue for the bus stop.
Thank you.
Anything else from citizen speak response? Okay, so then I wanted to bring up, we've got the 26th scheduled, the 9th of September scheduled for future meeting dates, and then the 23rd of September. And the 23rd of September is Rosh Hashanah. It starts on the evening of the 22nd and goes to the 23rd. And I don't know that it's appropriate for us to have a public meeting on Rosh Hashanah. Like, I think we would try to avoid other holidays. I don't know, Mr. Milano, if you have thoughts about that, or if anyone else would mind us trying to move that date around a little bit.
No, I think that's a good catch. I don't think we noticed that when we were just scheduling out our 2 weeks. I only noticed it because it's my son's first birthday. Or different.
Well, that'll
different
give you a
conflicts.
nice reason to not have another celebration. Okay, so let's if you guys have a second to look at your calendars, I don't know how the 24th of September or 25th of September would work for either of you. In the
I
evening.
think either of those dates works for me.
Mr. Daly?
I can do the 24th, but not the 25th.
Okay. Mr. Milano, let's maybe tentatively put the 24th of September, and you can add that to your the scheduling call when you speak with Mr. Wells.
Will do. Thank you.
Let's aim for that. Okay, then future agenda items. I don't know if anybody has one that they want to bring up now. That obviously you're always welcome to contact me in advance of a meeting to suggest one, and then Mr. Daly, we have to make sure we get you on the scheduling call for our next meeting as vice chair. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We're going to be adjourning from select board and then reopening as Governor Stoughton trustees. I think using the same Zoom link, so don't go anywhere, but we do need to adjourn from select board first. Is that right, Mr. Milano?
That's correct. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn from the select board portion of the meeting.
Okay. I'll go ahead and second that. And this will be a roll call vote, Ms. Hegarty?
Aye.
Mr. Daly?
Aye.
And myself, aye. All right, we are adjourned. And now I would like to call together to call to order the Governor Stoughton trustees. Number 2 item is the report from the Town Farm Review Committee, which we received in the halcyon days of late June of this year, which feels like an age ago. But I wanted to make sure that we didn't wait for too long to discuss what they had brought forward to us. And then we'll have the opportunity to think about what we want to do going forward. So this is specifically on the town farm property. Mr. Daly, you're sitting on the Affordable Housing Trust too, so I don't know. I may ask you if the Affordable Housing Trust has had a chance to react to or respond to those comments as well.
Yes, so I had an opportunity to speak with our chair about the potential for our next steps and what this would look like. And it really sits with us right now as a board. We only had 2 responses to the RFP, one withdrew. The one that is left and was a good proposal was from a Milton resident. So it's really on the board if we want to move forward with that RFP. It would probably seriously hinder us to go back out to RFP and working with good faith. If we awarded it to the remaining the remaining organization, we would then have to engage with them and then start to discuss what we would like to see. I think their proposal was for 36 units. If we're not comfortable with that, then perhaps we can speak to them about reducing the number of units. I think also a select board trip to the site may also be at hand. I don't think we've all been out there as this new board to really look at the space and understand what's in the RFP as we see it in real life. There is potential if there is a cost difference. I know our last discussion with the folks at Winter Valley showed the rise in their costs over the last 2 to 3 years. Re-engaging with the existing RFP, they would then have to tell us, what are their changes of cost? What is anything that has happened? There's potential that there is state aid that would help with the project. There also is a potential for the Affordable Housing Trust to invest in this project as well, because I think it would be our first and only sort of project in Milton that is affordable, low income family rental housing specifically. I don't think we have another one of those in town. So really it really falls to the board if we are moving forward with our remaining RFP or if we are going back out to bid. But going back out to bid would seem to be uh, not a good move at this point. So it'd be move forward with this one, or this is going to kind of languish.
Mr. Milano, or Ms. Hegarty, sorry, go ahead.
So I thought we were also going to have some type of traffic and other infrastructure analysis to the site. Has that been completed yet? Or would that be part of like our overall walkthrough?
Yeah.
So that hasn't been completed yet. I think we had the review committee came forward with some suggestions.
Yep.
So among the suggestions were to do a traffic impact study, to do a construction impact study, and to do and to look at the number of units on site. And so those were the recommendations. They've made them to us. I think it is now up to the Governor Stoughton trustees to figure out what we think the right next steps forward are. And it's helpful to have the input of the Affordable Housing Trust on that for sure.
Got it.
So that would be, I guess, a long answer to your short question.
Okay.
Mr. Milano, do you have anything that you want to add?
We had at our prior meeting, the board had asked about the traffic study and how that might happen and what that might cost. I did speak to DPW Director Marina Fernandez about that. And, you know, typically these kinds of reviews we would see run in the range of 10 to 15,000 when we're doing like an analysis of a potential project. As I stated then, and I'll just restate it now, is that if it would be helpful, most certainly, to have as much finality to a potential project, because then we're analyzing something that might not occur,
Right.
or might be bigger than what happens, or conversely smaller than what happens. So that's just the tricky part of the traffic piece, especially where projects will typically have the applicants perform that rather than the town go perform that. It's sometimes a little different when the town is issuing the RFP, or I'm sorry, in this case, the trustees is. And then cost in terms of, is that an expense the trustees want to bear coming out of a fund that is being generated for the poor of Milton? So if there is a cost, should the trustees bear that cost? In terms of, there was also discussion about like utility impacts, and again, the DPW director felt comfortable with that because it's on the applicant to prove that their connections are engineeringly sound and that they won't have downstream impacts on our own infrastructure. And if the sewer main elsewhere can't support it, then they have to make the upgrades or provide the payment to improve those. So less concern about water and sewer. Stormwater actually has to comply with any requirements for a new project, as would any project. So I think traffic is the hardest one to kind of nail down. Water and sewer we feel more comfortable around because they have to upgrade as any applicant would for a large project. So that's, again, a longer response on top of the chair.
No, I mean, I remember it being an issue that was out there, and the overall challenge of like, well, how can you get a traffic analysis if you don't have a hardened project to analyze? But I just wanted to throw the question out there as to like whether something was happening with that.
If I may tack on a question maybe for you, Mr. Milano, I guess here's related to the traffic study. So if we say, we want to see what plans for a 30 unit, instead of 36 unit structure would be there from a traffic perspective. And then we spend $10,000 to $15,000 and we get the results back. What are done with it? Is that the results then inform the infrastructure engineering around the entrance to that? Because I don't know. I basically, what do you do with that information once you've paid for it?
Yeah, I think yes, I think the main question would be, what can Governor Stoughton Lane support? The knock-on question, they'll look at Canton Ave and the intersection along Canton Ave as well. Just thinking about how these traffic studies typically look, they'll look at kind of the immediate access and then the surrounding impacts. So I think the thrust of that would be looking at Governor Stoughton Lane itself. And I think, everybody here knows that that existing condition presents some challenges that, I think we were hoping that a project would help facilitate some improvements to. But I think that would be the main thrust of that focus. Potential trip generation up and down Governor Stoughton Lane, what will that look like for entry and exit onto Canton Ave from there is the main questions I would assume.
Right. And then there could potentially be road improvement suggestions to Governor Stoughton's Lane, and then those we'd have to find revenue for that, or that would be something we'd hope the developer might be able to cover.
I think you would start with hoping the applicant would bear some of that, but I will just note as a side, there are grant programs out there that support projects around affordable housing. The Housing Works grant program in particular, MassWorks more generally, we've applied for MassWorks in East Milton because of the adjacencies to projects going on there. So whether it's an applicant plus the town plus a grant, there are different ways to cobble together infrastructure programs, particularly around housing, particularly around projects that support low-income housing.
So,
Mr. Daly.
So this is really kind of stalled through no fault of the applicants. Like, we've held on to these RFPs for a while now. So, Nick, if you could give me your thoughts on re-engagement, on if we choose to accept this RFP and this bid and move forward, are we accepting? Can we sit down with the applicant to discuss a change in units, to discuss the expenses? Or is this does it just have to move forward as is? I have a feeling that there's a way to, similar to a 40B, to talk about negotiating units down and then adding in the traffic study and then speaking about the infrastructure as well as the available grants, whether from the state or from the Affordable Housing Trust.
When I had inquired with town council on the specific question of whether too much time has passed to award based on the RFP, town council's answer was no. It's particularly around land transactions. There is no hard and fast timeline, and that going ahead with an award would be okay. In terms of what would be on the table for negotiation, I think broadly, you do have some wiggle room there. I would want to pause and confer and get back to the trustees before I give too much more advice on that specific question, and I can do that pretty quickly, and we can do it in writing. But generally, you're selecting based on certain metrics, and I think you do have some wiggle room to negotiate from there. It's just a question of how far does that extend?
Other questions or thoughts? So I think what we've got is Mr. Daly basically identified why we're kind of in the spot that we are, which is that we've waited on this for a very, very long time. And so moving forward, I think, and it only gets more expensive and more difficult the longer we wait. It seems to me that we've got two big questions around the project. So one is the size of the project, and one is the traffic implications of the project. So I wonder if we should, as the trustees, ask the applicant to give us a sense of what it might cost to adjust the unit number down by, I think, from 36. We could ask for, would it be feasible for them at a 30 or a 25 unit number, and then if not, Mr. Daly, we could potentially ask the Affordable Housing Trust, would they be, if we could get a sense of what the differential might be, knowing that the Affordable Housing Trust is supporting the Winter Valley work, would the Affordable Housing Trust be interested in potentially subsidizing this so we could get a little bit, we could move the number down slightly?
I think I'm not,
Go ahead.
maybe it's something we'll have to clear up with town council, or maybe Nick knows this offhand, but I think we may have to award it as is in the RFP, correct? And then any wiggle room negotiations or changes would happen after an award. I'm not sure that there can be a change done before, we say we're gonna move forward.
I'm looking at Mr. Milano.
I think that's right, and I will confirm and follow up. I think process would be that the board or the trustees, excuse me, evaluates the proposal in accordance with the RFP, awards it in accordance with the RFP, and then follows from there. But I can confirm that and report back. I think I'm kind of at the first inclination agreeing with Mr. Daly.
Well, I think if Mr. Daly's saying it and you're agreeing with him, then I'm inclined to think that that's probably the case too. Then my follow-up question for you, Mr. Milano, would be: is it feasible or usual in these circumstances that we would come back and say yes to the RFP, but say, but we're going to ask for some modifications to it?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, I think that ties out to the kind of the earlier conversation is if it is awarded based on the criteria in the RFP, that it met those criteria and exceeded it in certain places and was advantageous in others, and then kind of what would be open to further refinement and further negotiation as the project proceeds. I think that would be our process here, and I'll confer with council and get back to the trustees. But I think at an initial step, wrapping up those evaluations in the intervening time period would probably be a good initial step for the trustees to undertake. And just to kind of step back as to what the process was, the trustees did ask the Town Farm Review Committee to evaluate the proposals, and I think the trustees should take that on as well now, as that kind of wasn't fully completed from the review committee.
That's a good point. So, well, and currently we only have the one active RFP. So here's a suggested couple of steps, and you guys let me know what you think. So it seems to me like we could review the RFP and re-meet as the Governor Stoughton trustees next week with our sort of final thoughts on the RFP, and then Nick could inform us about town council's judgment on whether or not it's true that we can only that we have to accept it as submitted. The other question that I'd love to have answered by that time too is, Nick, if we accept an RFP and then we're unable to come to an agreement about the specifics, what are we on the hook for in terms of expenses for saying yes and then not being able to come to a final agreement? Anything? Or
no, that would be part of like a lease negotiation process that the parties may not reach an agreement, and there's no liability construed there.
Okay. And then I guess maybe a quick question for Mr. Daly for the Affordable Housing Trust. I am sensitive to Mr. Milano's point about the Governor Stoughton monies being, basically a trust fund that helps, the poor of Milton. I wonder if the Affordable Housing Trust would be willing to foot a $10,000 or $15,000 traffic study of the property to assist in making this happen.
I can put it to the trust. They may be more inclined to work on things that are direct to the building and construction, but maybe that's something that kind of gets wrapped into the project as a whole. Maybe it's framed as the trust is putting monies into the project, and then perhaps the folks that are bidding would use some of that money to handle the roads, instead of the trust only doing it to the roads. But it's something I'll put to the trust and see what the what the thoughts are.
Okay. And do you guys have a scheduled meeting before our next select board meeting?
You know, funny enough, then our next scheduled meeting is the day of our select board meeting. So I'll
Oh.
just I'll just email, and perhaps they can take it up in the meeting.
Okay, yeah, maybe if they can take it up in the meeting, they could even get back to you before, if we have Governor Stoughton Trust at the end, then they could get back to you by then. Okay, so I think, does that sound like good action steps for the next, and my goal, to be very clear, would be at our next meeting of the Governor Stoughton trustees, if we're all obviously if we're in agreement, we would have a vote on whether to approve the RFP based on what feedback we get from town council. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Yep.
Great. Okay, then I don't think we have any further business on the Governor Stoughton trustees to discuss, do we, Mr. Milano?
Meeting minutes, if the members are amenable,
Oh, yes.
and had a chance to review them.
Well, we can't do the March 11th ones because it was only me.
But that will be the case no matter what, because it'll be you and Richard alone anyway. If you'd prefer to have Richard at a meeting, I understand we won't have a quorum regardless, and it's up to the trust to
So if the trust is comfortable with me moving and accepting the minutes for March 11th, I see, yeah, we don't have any other recourse for that. Any objection? All right, well, I will move second and vote to approve the meeting minutes for March 11th. And then for the 30th, we do have a quorum. So I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes for the 30th.
A second.
Made and seconded. We'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Daly?
Aye.
Ms. Haggerty?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, so now I believe we have finished the business of the Governor Stoughton trustees. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn the meeting of the
Second.
Governor Stoughton trustees.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion, roll call vote. Mr. Daly?
Aye.
Ms. Haggerty?
Aye.
And myself, aye. We are adjourned again. Thank you guys for your work. Nick, thank you so much for joining us on vacation. We really, really appreciate it. Please return to your family and don't think about us for a couple of days.
I'll sleep. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Have a good one.
Night.